What if I told you that the worst moment of your life, the heartbreak you never saw coming, the betrayal that left you shattered, the family pain you still carry, that wasn't some cruel twist of fate. It was something you chose. Yeah, I know how that sounds. It almost feels offensive at first. Why would anyone, let alone you, ever choose pain like that? Why would your soul willingly walk into loss, trauma, grief? But the truth is stranger and far more powerful than it seems. Long before you were born, before this body, this name, this identity, you existed. Not as a person, but as a soul, a pure, radiant spark of consciousness. And in that form, in a realm beyond time and form, you sat down to design this life. You didn't do it alone. You were surrounded by guides, beings of light, wisdom, and love, who've been with you for eons. They didn't tell you what to do. They didn't judge you. Instead, they asked you one question. What do you want to learn next? And you answered. Maybe you said, I want to learn what real love feels like. Or, I want to find inner strength. Or even, I want to finally understand what forgiveness really means. And in response, the universe didn't just hand you those things. It gave you the blueprint to create them through experience. Because souls don't grow from lectures. They evolve through contrast, through immersion, through pain, joy, surrender, triumph, and everything in between. So you chose your family, not necessarily because they'd be kind or perfect, but because they'd show you the exact lessons you needed. You chose your soulmate, not because they'd complete you, but because they'd trigger something deep within you that would lead to your awakening. You even chose the ones who would break your heart, because that heartbreak would open you in ways nothing else could. And then, you crossed the veil. You stepped into this world, and like every soul before you, you forgot. Forgot the planning, forgot the purpose, forgot that you are not just a human being searching for meaning, but a soul living out a sacred design. But make no mistake, just because you forgot the plan doesn't mean you aren't following it. Now let's talk about karma, because people get it so wrong. Karma is not punishment. It's not some vengeful cosmic scorecard. It's not about you did bad, so now you get bad. That's human thinking. That's shame-based theology. The truth is, karma is education. It's experience. If in one life you lied to someone you loved, you may choose to be lied to in this one. Not to suffer, but to understand. To feel the ripple of that choice. To grow beyond it. The soul doesn't deal in blame. It deals in balance. And that's where soul contracts come in. These aren't metaphorical. These are literal, energetic agreements made between souls before birth. You chose others, and they chose you. You agreed to play roles in each other's stories. Sometimes that meant love. Sometimes that meant pain. Sometimes that meant both. But every person you've ever truly collided with in life, they weren't random. They were part of the plan. Think about the people who hurt you the most. Now what if, just what if, on a soul level, they loved you enough to play the villain? What if their betrayal broke you open in exactly the way you needed to discover who you really are? These contracts go deep. Some souls travel together over lifetimes, appearing again and again in different roles. Your best friend in this life might have been your sibling in the last. Your child now might have been your parent before. Roles shift, but the purpose remains. Growth, evolution, expansion. And still, there's the question. If all this was planned, why don't we remember? Because remembering would defeat the purpose. Think about it. If you walked into a movie and already knew the ending, every twist would feel flat. Earth isn't a punishment. It's a performance. It's a drama where the forgetting is part of the art. Because only through true immersion, real emotion, real challenge, real stakes, can the soul fully transform. But even in the forgetting, Your soul left you clues. You felt them. The gut feeling that saved you. The déjà vu that made you pause. The strange magnetic pull to a person or place you just met. The dreams that haunt you or feel more real than real life. These are breadcrumbs, echoes from before. Whispered reminders that you are more than what you appear to be. And when you begin to follow those threads, when you start to question everything, why did I end up with this family? Why do I attract the same kind of partner? Why am I drawn to certain people, certain places, certain ideas? You start remembering, not in words, but in feeling, in knowing. You start realizing, this life isn't just something that happened to you. It's something that's unfolding from you. Like a seed that already contained the tree, your life is a sacred unfolding. And the more you remember that you chose this, the more you reclaim your power to choose what comes next. Because here's the truth. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're just awakening. And once you understand that your soul chose this life, you start choosing back. So what really happens after we die? Not the part about flowers, funerals, or a name etched into stone. I'm talking about the moment your soul separates from your body. The exact second the breath stops and something eternal begins. There's no pain, no judgment, no tunnel with a booming voice telling you what you did wrong. There's just stillness, an almost indescribable peace, a remembering, like waking from a deep dream and suddenly recalling who you are, who you've always been. Your soul lifts, slowly and gently, entering what many call the interlife, a space between incarnations. In this realm, you're not a personality. You're not your job title or your trauma. You're consciousness. And in this expanded state, you finally see everything clearly. You don't look back at your life with shame. You don't beat yourself up. What you experience is something far more transformative, reflection. You begin a process called the life review. But it's not like watching a movie of your life. It's more immersive. You re-experience everything, not just from your perspective, but from the perspective of those you impacted. You feel the joy you gave, the love you held back, the hurt you caused. Not in a punishing way, but in a way that helps your soul understand. It's emotional, raw, honest, but there's no fear, only growth. You begin to see the ripple effect of your actions, your choices, your words. Not because the universe wants to guilt you into doing better, but because it wants you to understand how interconnected everything truly is. And then, when that understanding starts to take root, something beautiful happens. You begin designing your next life. This part isn't done to you, it's done with you. Alongside spirit guides, light beings, or higher consciousness, whatever term feels right, you co-create your next incarnation. Not out of obligation, but out of curiosity, out of the soul's innate desire to evolve. You choose where you're born, what era you'll live in, what kind of body you'll inhabit. You decide the general structure of your next journey. Will you be male or female? Rich or poor? Will you be born into love or into struggle? These questions aren't about comfort, they're about expansion. Your soul doesn't grow through ease, it grows through contrast. That's why some souls choose immense challenge. They want to learn empathy, resilience, unconditional love. And the only way to truly learn those things is to live through what they are not. And so, your soul makes arrangements. You don't just pick a body, you pick dynamics. The parents you'll be born to, the siblings who will shape your early years, the soulmates and adversaries who will cross your path. You even write contracts with them, sacred agreements made before birth. These contracts might include love, they might include pain. Often they include both. You might agree to meet someone who will challenge every part of you, not to break you, but to wake you up. Maybe you choose to lose someone early in life, not as punishment, but because that loss will teach you how precious connection is. These aren't random, they're precise, and they're made with full awareness of the growth they'll offer. But even in all this planning, there's one more layer: free will. Your soul might map out the terrain, but how you walk that path, that's entirely up to you. That's why no matter how much is planned, nothing is set in stone. If you take a different turn, if you delay a lesson, if you choose a different rhythm, the universe adjusts. It doesn't punish. It redirects. It patiently waits for you to remember who you are, again and again. Once the blueprint is complete, your soul prepares for the descent. But before returning, there's one more thing it must do. Forget. The veil drops. The memories fade. Because for your experience to be real, it has to feel real. If you remembered everything, your contracts, your past lives, your soul agreements, the lessons wouldn't land. That heartbreak wouldn't carry the weight it needs to. That moment of triumph wouldn't feel earned. So you forget, but not entirely. The soul leaves clues, intuition, déjà vu, that gut feeling you can't explain, a dream that feels too real, a stranger that feels like home. These are echoes from the life you planned, reminders that you are not alone and never have been. And those moments of clarity, that sudden pull toward a person, a place, or a purpose, that's your soul knocking, saying, "You've been here before. You planned this. Keep going." Reincarnation is not some punishment or trap. It's school. Each life is a classroom. Each experience, a lesson. And you, the eternal student, the soul hungry to grow, to heal, to evolve. You return not because you're being forced to, but because there's more to learn. And until the lessons are complete, the patterns will repeat. But the moment you begin to wake up to this, to truly see your life as a spiritual design, not random chaos, something inside you shifts. You stop playing the victim. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That's when healing begins. That's when the karma starts to dissolve. Not because you've escaped the pattern, but because you've mastered it. And the mastery is what makes the soul lighter, freer, closer to liberation. And liberation, that's what we're all moving toward. There's something most people don't realize about pain. It echoes. Sometimes what you're carrying isn't from this life at all. The overwhelming fear of abandonment, the crippling insecurity, even though you've done everything right, the feeling of never being enough, no matter how much love surrounds you. These aren't always wounds created in the present. They're often inherited, not through genetics, but through the soul. Your soul doesn't remember with images or words. It remembers through energy. That energy builds up over lifetimes, turning into patterns, habits, even emotional reflexes. That's why certain people feel instantly familiar. That's why you fall into the same toxic cycle again and again, even when you swear you've learned your lesson. What you're actually seeing is karma. But not karma as punishment, not some moral scoreboard of right and wrong. Karma is unfinished experience. It's growth that's been delayed. It's the soul quietly saying, "There's still something here for you to understand." Think of karma as a whisper. It's not here to hurt you. It's trying to wake you up. Every time a painful pattern repeats, your soul is pointing toward a deeper truth. Maybe that failed relationship wasn't just about bad timing. Maybe it was about helping you find your boundaries. Maybe that betrayal wasn't just someone else's flaw. It was the spiritual pressure you needed to finally choose yourself. Once you start to see your life through the lens of soul growth instead of fate or luck, everything changes. You begin to realize you're not just a passenger in your own story. You're the one steering it. You always were. But here's the part that most people miss. Those same patterns, they're not fixed. You're not cursed to repeat the same cycle forever. Once a lesson is fully learned, the karma dissolves. And when that happens, the pain loses its grip. That's how powerful your awareness is. That's how much agency you actually have. But the first step is always the same: awareness. You have to stop blaming the world for your wounds and start asking, why did my soul choose this? That shift alone, switching from victim to student, can transform your entire life. Suddenly, you begin to see people differently. That parent who criticized you constantly, maybe your soul chose them not to damage you, but to force you to define your own worth. That ex who drained you emotionally, what if they weren't a mistake but a mirror? A contract that said, I'll show you how little you think of yourself, so you can finally choose better. When you start seeing life through this lens, even the darkest moments start to shine with meaning. And here's what's wild. The most painful people in your life may have been the ones who loved you most on the soul level. Before birth, they agreed to play the villain so you could evolve. That doesn't excuse their behavior, and it doesn't mean you need to keep them in your life. But it does offer you a path to peace. Because when you see the soul behind the pain, forgiveness stops being something you give for others. It becomes something you give yourself to be free. This is how karma is released. Not through punishment, not through payback, but through understanding. Once the lesson is embodied, it no longer needs to repeat. And that's when something bigger starts to stir inside you, a longing for freedom. Not from people, not from circumstances, but from the entire cycle itself. This is what all ancient wisdom traditions speak of, even if they use different names. Some call it moksha, some call it ascension, some just call it peace. But they're all pointing to the same thing: liberation. And this liberation isn't about escaping life. It's about rising above the illusions that keep you trapped in it. The illusion of separation, the illusion of lack, the illusion that you are anything less than whole. To reach this kind of freedom, you don't need to become a monk or retreat from the world. You just need to remember who you are underneath the programming. The soul doesn't seek silence for the sake of silence. It seeks truth. And truth begins with self-awareness. When you start to observe your thoughts without being ruled by them, when you question your patterns instead of defending them, when you respond to pain with curiosity instead of anger, you start waking up. And the more awake you become, the more the soul leads. You begin living with intentionality. You stop reacting to life and start co-creating it. You choose love when fear would have been easier. You choose compassion when judgment would have been justified. You let go, not because you're giving up, but because you finally understand. Holding on is just another form of control. And this is where liberation begins. Not at the end of some long spiritual journey, but in small daily awakenings. Every time you break a generational curse, every time you say no when your old self would have said yes just to be liked, every time you sit with discomfort instead of numbing it. These are the moments when the soul begins to untangle itself from the karmic web. This is where the cycle starts to crack. And once you crack it, you begin to remember what it feels like to be light again. Not because your life is perfect, but because you're no longer chasing freedom. You're embodying it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the whole point all along. So now that you know your soul chose this life, and maybe even every challenge that came with it, the question becomes, what now? What do you do with that knowing? Because knowledge without action is just information. But knowledge with intention, that's transformation. And here's the truth most people miss. Your soul isn't waiting for a breakthrough moment, some big sign from the heavens. It's been speaking to you this entire time, in the quiet moments, in the repeated lessons, in the people who show up and feel too familiar to be coincidence. The universe doesn't scream, it whispers. But we've gotten so used to the noise that we've forgotten how to listen. You've probably felt it before. That soft nudge when you're about to say yes to something that feels wrong. The discomfort in your gut when you're betraying your truth. Or the calm, unexpected peace that floods your body when you're finally in alignment. That's your soul. That's your internal compass. And the more you listen to it, the louder it becomes. You don't have to be perfect. You don't need a spiritual degree. You just have to be willing to stop running. From yourself, from your past, from your pain. Because everything you're running from was handpicked by your soul, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you from the inside out. Alignment doesn't mean your life becomes easy. It means your life becomes real. You stop living someone else's story and start writing your own. You stop chasing things that look good on paper and start following what feels good in your bones. You say no more often. You forgive without needing closure. You let go without resentment. And something begins to shift. Your life doesn't just improve, it begins to harmonize. People come into your world not to complete you, but to reflect you. Opportunities arise that feel more like recognition than luck. You start to feel at home in your own skin, even when things aren't perfect. That's what happens when you walk in rhythm with your soul. And here's the beautiful twist. When you do that, you're no longer adding karma. You're resolving it. You're untangling the knots of 1,000 lifetimes just by showing up fully in this one. You stop the wheel not by fighting it, but by outgrowing it. Because the soul only returns when there are lessons left to learn. But when you begin to live as your highest self, something amazing happens. You graduate, not with fireworks or applause, but with peace. With the quiet, steady knowing that you're no longer repeating anything. You're no longer bound to anything. You've lived the full range of emotion, joy and grief, love and heartbreak, and you've returned to the center. That center, that's home. That's the state all the great spiritual masters spoke of. Buddha called it nirvana. Jesus called it the kingdom within. It's not a place, it's a vibration. It's where the soul becomes one with the divine, not as a concept, but as a living, breathing experience. From that space, the soul doesn't need to come back, but it might choose to. And when it does, it comes as a teacher. Not someone with all the answers, but someone who can walk with others in their questions. That's what a liberated soul looks like. Not distant or untouchable, but fully present. Human, but awake. Grounded, but light. Maybe that's your path. Maybe that's why this message found you right now. Not because you're broken, but because you're remembering. You're remembering who you are, where you came from, why you're here, and most importantly, what comes next. And now it's your turn. You don't need to fix your whole life overnight. You don't need to heal all your wounds before you start. You just need to pause and ask yourself one question. What is my soul trying to learn through this moment? Not tomorrow. Not 10 years from now. This moment. Because every single experience, no matter how small, how boring, how painful, is a portal to growth if you choose to see it that way. Every reaction you have is an invitation to become conscious. Every choice is an energetic vote for who you're becoming. So let me leave you with this. You're not here to chase your dreams. You're here to claim them. You're not a beggar at the door of the universe. You're the architect of your reality. Speak to the universe, not just with words, but with your energy, your attention, your alignment. Watch what happens when you stop asking for signs and start becoming one. Because this isn't just your story, it's your soul's legacy. And now I want to hear from you. What's one thing your soul has been trying to tell you lately? Something you've ignored, or buried, or doubted? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. And who knows? Maybe the universe is already listening, ready to respond faster than you think.